So just to introduce, again, my name is Peter Mueller. I'm the new principal of Principal High School. Jamie Hozak is the assistant principal, and Liz Pencil is our college counselor. The three of us work with, additionally, 2 full-time counselors, and the 5 of us administer the support and academic program at the high school. It's a great team, and we have a lot of fun together. The mission of the school, the 2 words that we highlighted here, are every and choice. So if we think about students, and currently we have 448 students at the high school, and it's important to recognize that even though that's what feels like to me a lot of students in a fairly good-sized school, we emphasize choice for each and every student. And as our school grows, so too do the choices academically, artistically, personally, athletically, so do all those choices. And as the SALT grows and our schools grow, so too do those choices. It's becoming, I think, much more of a full-service high school, if you will, with choices for all kinds of learners and all kinds of academic achievement, and we're all excited about that. I want to pick up, I think Jennifer said a lot of really important things about this idea of a growth mindset versus an achievement mindset. And I have 2 students, 2 children, myself, they're 18 years old, and I've suffered through the challenges of raising children and continue to do so. But that suffering, I think, has been what's so, kind of a joyful part of life. And that is, how do we get this right? How do we do our best to raise the best kiddos possible? And so one of the things that I love is this idea, and Jennifer hit on all these same things. Are you smart? Are you a good test taker? Intelligence is. This, I think, is one of the most important things for students to hear from their parents, is that intelligence is not a fixed thing. It's a built thing. And that through effort and hard work and perseverance, you get smarter. And that's really the overall message that we want to continue to instill in our kids, in our children, that if they work at something, they will achieve great things. I also think about school, if you will, as a bit of a harbor. And in an elementary school, you can think that that boat is really just attached to the mainland. And as middle school, that boat starts to loosen up those huge ropes and starts to kind of nudge its way out of the harbor. In high school, it's still in the harbor, but they have started to let go of mom and dad and look to what's coming next. And so I think about that analogy a lot when I'm thinking of students, and are we preparing them to set sail on their own course? They're trying to leave you behind, and that's a great thing, but they still need you each and every day. And I think about that, and I talked to my wife before coming over here with some challenges that we continue to have with our own kiddos. Those challenges I don't imagine are ever going to go away. We have a couple of Jed's parents are here. We haven't called out that. But it's so
Tell us your challenges.
It's so great to just kind of, I think, get our arms around the idea that we are working to help students set sail. They are going to have choices. They need to navigate those choices with your help. And so much of the bedrock of how we approach education is that effort, hard work, and support is going to be, those are the important ingredients that are going to help your student be independent and set sail on the course they want to be in life. Develop interest, and Jen mentioned risk. I think this is great. The thing when I heard her say risk, I was like, ooh, a lot of parents are worried about risky behavior. And I'm worried about risky behavior for my own children. And that's one of the reasons that we've always, my wife and I have always thought about how can you help your son or daughter be engaged in challenging, risky, not risky like dangerous, but to get them take risks intellectually, emotionally, athletically, so they get that feeling, that experience of succeeding and failing and being supported through those challenges. I think that's so important. We'd much rather them have safe risks than exercise risky behavior. Encourage coaching relationships in and outside of school. I was just talking to Minerva. And my children, again, same kind of thing. You want to develop coaching relationships with your children, not just on the playing field, but accessing teachers at lunch, after school, finding the tutor, developing relationships where they're learning from different people in different ways. Again, it's that idea that additional coaching isn't a bad thing. I want a coach, and I have a coach. Rob Stein is my coach. Jamie is the person I collaborate most closely with. I'm not going to survive without relying heavily on those two people. And that's the message you can bring from your own professional experience. We need to teach students to reach out and make use of external expertise, not just their teachers. Support at home, modeling, time to be at home. You know, I always remember I taught at CRMS for 9 years, and we had our first headmaster there. I thought it was so ironic. He said, Don Reed, he said, the number one criteria for how a student is going to do in college, how often they have dinner with their parents. I thought that was ironic from a head of a boarding school. Shed light on something that was a structural flaw in the boarding school model. So thankfully, so many of you, myself included, are raising our children and having dinner at home. That's a huge, important criteria to sustain themselves going forward. What do you want to be when you grow up? And I think this is one of those. A lot of the questions come when you get into high school. Where are you going to college? I think that's a great question. But so much of it is, you know, what I would say is that you don't have to know. What you're trying to do is to equip yourself with the academic skills and experiences and habits, the same kinds of habits that Jen talked about in terms of the habits of a scholar. Those habits lead to choices, lead you to the kind of life that you want to lead. And that's how I frame, that's how teachers frame, you know, selling college. You're not necessarily going to know that you're going to be a mechanic or an accountant or an architect or a businessman. But by going to college, you're going to equip yourself with the skills necessary for you to have those choices. So what do those choices look like in high school? I talked about choices in terms of, you know, where are you going to access the most rigorous curricula that is appropriate for you. And that, as our school becomes bigger and bigger, we are able to fill those wide variety of needs. So here's just a couple of different examples. So for a freshman coming in, on the left, here's how your progression might look. These are English 1, 2, 3, English 4, concurrent enrollment with CMC. That's how your classes might look if you are able but not as ambitious a student. And that's fine. That's going to enable you to enroll in 2 or 4 year college if you are successful in all of those classes. If you are a more ambitious student, your enrollment would look like English 1 as a freshman, English 2 as a sophomore, and immediately into AP Language and then AP English Literature. So I often talk about a bit of a fork in the road for high school students. And that fork in the road sometimes happens prematurely when you move into math classes, but it for sure happens as a junior. And one of the criticisms of high schools and public high schools, including Basalt high schools, is that if your son or daughter is in English 1 and Math 1, in English 2 and Math 2, then are they being well enough prepared to make that big jump into the AP classes? And I'm I'm not going to try to dissect how we do that, but I think it's something that you want as parents to be aware of, is that there's a bit of a first year, second year, fifth year reality to high school. And my own children face that, and I've watched hundreds of children be challenged with that. And it's something that high schools work on, but as parents you just need to be conscious of the fact you got as a sophomore. And the question is, are they doing well enough in that sophomore year to make that jump into the most rigorous classes? And that's a question that we work on internally, but as parents you have to be conscious of it in terms of how you coach and support your own child. So here's what it looks like for math. Pretty typical on the left, a much more ambitious schedule on the right. So on the right, in the summer, as you move from 8th grade into 9th grade, if you were a strong math student, you have the ability to move into a Math 2 readiness class over the summer. That enables you to jump into what is typically a sophomore and often junior year class as a as a freshman in Math 2, and then it unfolds from there. As a sophomore, you're in Math 3. Junior year, you're taking an advanced placement calculus class, and then your senior year, an additional AP calculus, PC, or statistics. So my point in this conversation is to go right back to what Jen is talking about. You're really emphasizing an active, engaged, an active parenting role, but you're trying to shift that conversation away from what did you get to what are you learning and how did it go and what kind of structure can you create at home so that your son or daughter feels impelled and compelled to continue to work about and care about their studies. The other thing I think about all the time is what is the trajectory? And the trajectory in life is long. The arc of success goes on for a long time. And I worry about parents who fixate on what did you get, where are you going, what are you going to do. All of those are really challenging questions for students, for children to really assimilate and figure out, how do I make something good come out of this when all I want to say is no, and distance yourself from your own child. And I'm not a psychologist, but we do know from our own work as educators that emphasizing growth, emphasizing goal setting, emphasizing reaching out to other professionals in that coaching relationship, all of those things are really helpful in compelling your students, your children, to take ownership of their learning. And that's what we're really embracing and excited about. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jamie. He's going to tell you a little bit more about how we're doing and what it looks like.